Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by apologizing for the late start. I am sorry about that, but we were meeting in my office with the President and accomplishing some business, and I hope you will excuse us. It's a real pleasure and a distinct privilege for me to introduce our speaker tonight. The very fact of his presence here at the Institute is a special honor because it occurs at a time of great international uncertainty. And we are truly grateful that he's found time in his busy schedule to address this gathering. Algeria, of course, is a critical player in world energy markets.
L'Algérie est un important partenaire dans le marché international du pétrole parce que c'est un exportateur.
That has done much over the last decade to open up its hydrocarbon industry to foreign firms, including many American companies that are represented here tonight in this room. Algeria is also a key diplomatic player in ongoing efforts to secure stability in North Africa, particularly as it pertains to the resolution of the lingering conflict over the Western Sahara. And one reason we're late is that those efforts have now reached a critical juncture. Some of you know I'm the personal envoy of the United Nations Secretary General on the issue of the Western Sahara. And so I welcome the engagement of our speaker and his government in a dialogue on the United Nations attempt to reach a solution on this very long-standing issue. Not least, of course, Algeria is a country with its own history of terrorist outrages against civilians, an experience tragically shared since September 11 by the people of the United States of America. Our guest tonight can surely speak with authority on these and indeed all issues related to his country, to its government, to its foreign and domestic policies. And that is because he has truly dedicated his entire life to Algeria, beginning with its struggle for independence in the late 1950s and the early 1960s. In the decades that followed, he served in a number of important political and governmental positions, including Minister of Foreign Affairs and member of the Central Committee of the National Liberation Front. His public life has not been without hardship, including a period of exile in the 1980s. But his return to Algeria culminated in April 1999 with his election to the presidency. Since assuming office, our speaker has placed fostering international conflict resolution at the very top of his agenda. And he has known success, most notably perhaps by playing a decisive role in mediating the peace treaty signed between Ethiopia and Eritrea in Algiers last December. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce to you His Excellency Abdelaziz Bouteflika, President of the People's Republic of Algeria. Your Excellency.
Please don't be scared. Ladies and gentlemen, all these papers are actually not part of my speech. Just one part of it is for the speech, actually. I think I can say that the spirit answering mainly to our heart's language, and that my friend James Baker has spoken with his heart. And so I would like to thank him very much. In the name of the Algerian people and the government of Algeria as well. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, this meeting was due to take place on September 19th, but it was postponed because of the tragic events that shocked your country. I would also like to emphasize that Algeria shares your pain and reiterates our sympathy for all the victims of these unspeakable acts. The terrorism that has shaken you, we know it for a very long time, for more than 10 years, actually. And unfortunately, in spite of all the efforts of the international community, the Algerian people alone had to face on their own, and almost amidst global indifference, this threat affecting humanity as a whole, as confirmed by the recent events. I am convinced that the current mobilization of opinions and governments will contribute to put an end to this barbaric violence, and obviously it has to be recognized that this would require not only military but also security means, but also a critical and bold review of international situations that led to the emergence of terrorism in the Muslim countries as well as in the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Mr. James Baker and the foundation he presides for offering me the opportunity to be here today and to introduce Algeria with its difficulties as well as its potential, as well as the assets favoring its development and influence in the world. But let me tell you firstly that I am very pleased to meet Mr. James Baker, whom I have known and I appreciate during his visit in Algiers, and we had the opportunity to debate on various issues at length. Beside the friendly feelings, I would like to reiterate to him that I make it a point of expressing before you my admiration to the statesman-like exceptional qualities that Mr. Baker, my friend, has shown to serve his country as well as the international community. To a certain degree, I am also a victim of the diplomatic subtlety, which adds to the high esteem and respect I wholeheartedly and naturally convey to him today from the bottom of my heart. Your institute, which honored me with this invitation, enjoys a worldwide influence, setting it among the best valued places of American thought and civilization. Therefore, I see it as a privilege to be invited to address you on the issue you have chosen yourself, which is the energetic policy of my country. I have accepted this invitation because I was flattered as far as the virtues of this institute, because I believe in the direct contact that alone helps to break the taboos and ensures mutual understanding, because we do share the same determination to enhance our cooperation, and we intend to work together for the stability and prosperity of the world. In this kind of dialogue, I am also here to listen to you, to gather your viewpoints, your different points of view, which will help extend and enhance economic and commercial relations between our countries. I would also like to begin drawing the main outlines of our new economic and national revitalization policy, as well as our development prospects. This policy enables great investment opportunities for all those who may be interested in a relationship of cooperation with Algeria, specifically with the energy sector, with hydrocarbons and electricity, given the critical role that this sector plays both in the Algerian economy and the Algerian-American relationships, and also more generally because it is an unavoidable factor of global economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, more than 2 years ago, Algeria started a large-scale political and economic reform, both on the economic and political platforms. Such reforms were worked out in consultation with all partners associated in the economic and social debate, and they are part of a coherent and progressive process of national revitalization. This program of action has 3 interrelated objectives: to defend the republican grounds of the state, to set up the necessary tools for good governance, to launch structural reforms aimed at leveling national economy up to the rules of a free, open, and competitive market economy. Algeria now has a stabilized macroeconomic frame that helped adjusting the balance of fundamental indicators necessary to a sound and sustainable growth. And we also have a transparent and attractive legal and regulatory frame which favors good governance as well as domestic and foreign private investment. Basic macroeconomic data allow to state that the Algerian economy, managed in few years, was able to, firstly, improve its exchange reserves, coming to $17 billion towards the end of 2000 and 2001, which represents 16 to 18 months of imports. The improvement of external balances make us expect for the end of this year a surplus, which was not normal for us for many years. And the foreign debt has been reduced with an amount of approximately $20 billion at the end of 2001, and a significant improvement of debt servicing compared to national production, which fell to 21% of export at the end of last year, whereas it was 45% at the end of '98. An inflation rate stabilized at about 2% last year, which was more than 5% in '98, and it was 25% in the early '90s. An economic growth rate of 4% for the year 2000, 4.5% for this year, and although it remains low regarding the requirements of the revitalization progress, it is far better than some years ago when it was insignificant, even negative. However, the unemployment rate is close to 30% for the majority of the young people, and a high social demand of essential needs cloud this assessment and arouse the government's concern in its program to try to get out of this crisis. We are obviously aware that we have a long way to go to settle such a troubling problem. This macroeconomic stability is also an encouraging factor in the pursuit of the objectives set forth by the government program in order to meet an efficient and realistic manner our population's needs as well as the requirements of our economic growth. The main point in any economic policy is the capacity to cope with what is possible and what is desirable. Such a large-scale reform program is not easy to carry out. The experience in other countries shows that it takes time and implies heavy sacrifices at the political and social levels. The above list of improvements in the fundamental indicators of the Algerian economy are a warrant for all our foreign partners, and it proves the soundness of our approach and offers reliable grounds for investors interested in reviving the Algerian economy. The scope and variety of opportunities offered to direct investment, partnership, and technical assistance are in proportion to our development needs and our huge potential in the mining field in particular, where great sleeping reserves in hydrocarbon, oil and gas, and various ores lie hidden and need to be exploited. A high and sustainable growth, we bank on an average rate of 7% over 10 years, turns out to be necessary to the Algerian economic recovery. To this end, we will have to raise the level of investment and guarantee at the same time their efficiency while improving the performance of the current productive potential. Such a policy implies, according to experts, an investment in the order of 8 to 10 billion US dollars. Yet, for reasons of economic efficiency and due to the constraints imposed by official debt and other expenses that we must face, such as public health, education, social protection, security, etc., the state can no longer fund on its own these investment programs. It is within this context that Algeria needs capital investment, modern technologies, and savoir-faire to achieve its objectives. And these are especially encouraging partnership, direct investment, and technical assistance. Our approach tends presently to lift all constraints and obstacles which are hampering our country's economical revival. It aims to boost investment in all sectors and improve our company's profits. These new arrangements pave the way for free competition and a broad participation of private sector operators. This process of economic liberalization, already framed by a series of legal and institutional arrangements, is aimed at reforming major sectors of the national economy and create an auspicious environment for investment. Also, such is the case for the telecommunication sector, in which a law has been issued to reform the sector as early as August of 2000. The aim is to relieve the state of management and exploitation activities. The contributions of private capital will help meeting the demand and facing the deep technological changes occurring in the telecommunications sector throughout the world. The law on liberalization of the mining sector has been issued in July of 2001. 2 new decrees have been enacted concerning the development of investment, organization, management, and privatization of economic state-aimed enterprises. Firstly, the first one sets the regime applicable to domestic and foreign investments in production activities with goods and services, as well as investment in concessions and/or license allocations. It provides clearly for the guarantees offered to the private sector investment, and it also codifies the procedures and simplifies them by creating a single wicket. The second one sets the privatization modalities of the public enterprises, the procedures to follow to favorize transparent and rapid privatization operations and provide for the means to monitor them. Other similar actions are under course. The first one is to revitalize and modernize the banking sector, as well as develop the capital market, which is being leveled up already. As for the state-owned banks, our objective is to provide them with banking technologies and organization better adapted to the requirements of modern economy in view of improving the variety and quality of their services and performances. A greater importance is attached to banking partnership and the establishment of financial companies, of foreign financial companies in Algeria. Within this context, many private banks and financial representations have already been authorized. This necessary arrangement are taken so as to have a better adapted financial market to our capacities and especially to the new requirements imposed by the globalization of trade. Ladies and gentlemen, Algeria has always played a major role on the world energy scene. It managed to adapt to the changes and sometimes played the pioneer role in the development of new branches. The expansion of gas, to which Algeria largely contributed, is a good example in this regard. It is also the case of NLG, a bet laid by my country 37 years ago when we created the first industrial-sized unit of natural gas liquefaction in Arzew, which is still supplying the world market up to now. We built 2 intercontinental gas pipelines. The first ensures Europe's supply since the early 70s. Starting in the early 70s, Algeria started to supply the eastern coast of the U.S. At the end of the 80s, Algeria opened the first crossing of the Suez Channel by a methane tanker and has provided Japan with Algerian gas for a year. As part of a new development strategy, the upstream and downstream international redeployment of Sonatrach involves its participation in projects often located in remote areas. To this effect, the national company is present in Latin America, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. 4 examples of gas supply in American and European markets are worth mentioning. To show Sonatrach breakthroughs in terms of international redeployment on a changing gas scene, which requires proven skills, a great mobility, and a high tactical sense. Firstly, Sonatrach has invested in Peru in gas distribution in association with an international consortium to transport to output of the Kamisi gas field. This presence could be extended to a possible participation in the construction of an LNG compound aimed at supplying a regasification unit in Mexico, which would provide California with gas. Secondly, in the case of the development in the In Salah gas field, the national company and the American English group BP Amoco Arco concluded an agreement last August for the marketing of 9 billion cubic meters per year starting in 2004. The investments needed are in the order of $2.5 billion US. A marketing joint company by both groups has already placed 4 billion cubic meters per year in the Italian market. The remaining 5 billion will be sold by Sonatrach. Thirdly, the national company entered into a partnership with 2 European groups in order to better markets presence upstream and downstream the gas chain. With GDF, which is involved in the oil upstream in Algeria, in a spot LNG selling 1 billion cubic meters, mainly aimed at the American market. This quantity, representing 10% of the share due to GDF, 10.2 billion cubic meters, will be put at the disposal of MED LNG and Gas, a joint company 50-50 between Sonatrach and GDF in charge of this transaction. The cargo will be delivered by the methane tankers of Sonatrach and GDF. Prior to this newly born company, Sonatrach and Gaz de France had already delivered, through common arrangements, 200 million cubic meters of LNG to the American market. And with Trac de Bel from Belgium and Gas Natural for a swap agreement for the diversion by compensation of a volume of 1 billion cubic meters of gas from Trinidad to the Everett terminal during the period from July 2001 to April 2002, the quantities to compensate and which were expected for the Spanish market will be deducted on a contract concluded between Sonatrach and Distrigas Belgium. Now that the new Algerian energy policy opens new prospects of partnership, it is allowed to hope that these triangular formulas incite American companies to enter into partnership with Sonatrach and Sonelgas to produce and or sell in common gas and electricity to Europe. As the third gas exporting country in the world, Algeria is actually a full-part gas actor who stood by European and American gas companies in the critical stages of development of the international gas trade, but also an actor who is determined to fully assume in the future his role in order to contribute to the development prospects of this energy power in the world market. Algeria enjoys significant gas reserves, which allow it to continue to play a key role for a long time and meet the needs of European countries especially. A scenario based upon tangible data and set on minimum hypotheses allows to consider an additional volume of about 500 billion cubic meters to be exported mainly to Europe. Some of the additional exports can be carried out at relatively short notice compared to the long notice characterizing the new gas projects, thanks to the extension ability of the existing infrastructure for exports of Sonatrach. The two gas pipelines from Algeria to Europe, one to Italy and the other to Spain, offer a potential, an additional potential of 15 billion cubic feet for the European markets by simply adding new compression stations. Additionally, With the existing, in addition to the existing means, we are planning with various operators on the Italian market to achieve further supply of LNG through new regasification terminals under construction currently in Italy, as well as in natural gas shipped through a new gas pipeline linking Algeria to Sardinia. The construction of this new submarine pipeline will offer the economic opportunity to lay simultaneously an electric cable, foreseeing a future project of electricity generation to be fulfilled by Algeria as part of our policy of valorization of natural gas and fiber optic telecommunication lines linking Africa to Europe. As far as the southwestern Europe is concerned, we have initiated, in agreement with the Spanish government, the study of a direct link through another submarine gas pipeline. Taking advantage of the building of this pipeline, a 2,000 megawatt submarine electric cable will connect Spain to Algeria in the framework of a project to export 1,200 megawatts of electricity. The capacity of the electric cable leaves a reserve of 800 megawatts for the transport of electricity for any investor interested in working out another electricity generation project in Algeria meant to be exported. A fiber optic telecommunication system connecting Spain to Algeria will also be laid along these submarine channels. The Trans-African gas pipeline, under study, comes within the same spirit. This gas pipeline, which will connect the Abuja gas fields in Nigeria to Beni Suef on the Algerian coast, while connecting it to the Algerian existing network, will allow to sell off on the European markets the Algerian and Nigerian gas output. This large-scale project will guarantee a better utilization of the Nigerian gas resources, which are presently being flared, causing losses equal to 220,000 barrels per day, with serious consequences on the environment. The project covers exports and domestic consumption in Nigeria, as well as countries crossed by the gas pipeline, that is Niger and Mali. This will contribute to improving the living standard of the concerned populations. The layout of the workmanship will fall within the prolongation of the Trans-Saharan Road up to Nigeria and will draw on the installation of a fiber optic telecommunication system covering the distance between north and south of the African continent, while connecting the projects under course linking Nigeria and South Africa. It is clear that such major projects of valorization of our hydrocarbon resources are part of an integrated approach. Their intercontinental scope sets Algeria as a material link between the African continent and the European continent. The use of fiber optics will considerably improve communications and trade between the African continent and the rest of the world. Additionally to the reserves already discovered, Algeria has an important potential of hydrocarbons, and its large sedimentary basins remain underexplored, with a density of less than 8 wells per 10,000 square kilometers, whereas at the world level, the average density exceeds 100 wells, as you very well know, and in the United States, it's more than 500 wells per each 10,000 square kilometers. As a matter of fact, Algeria's sedimentary basin dwells over 1.5 square kilometers. Only 42% of this surface is presently being under research and exploration by Sonatrach. With a surface of more than 100,000 square kilometers, the Algerian offshore is almost unexplored, despite its promising potential compared to other basins in the eastern Mediterranean. Many oil companies, especially American ones, are aware of these assets and have invested in Algeria in the exploration and exploitation of fields, thanks to the early legal arrangements of 1986 and 1991, which helped extending partnerships and attracting new operators. Gigantic fields of more than 10 billion petroleum equivalent barrels have been discovered. Investments have also concerned recovery rates, improvement projects on oil sites, and the development of gas fields. In this regard, nearly $5 billion have been invested in Algeria by international oil companies. This success encourages us to go forward and to do even better. That is why we have defined a new energy and mining policy, which I would like to expound the objectives and the main components of here today. Ladies and gentlemen, in a context of high international competitiveness, we deemed it necessary to reinforce the attractiveness of the Algerian mining field and encourage new foreign capital. We decided to lift monopolies and establish market rules, ensuring equity and transparency for national as well as foreign operators. The key of the Algerian new energy policy is a radical change of the state's role. The latter is hence entitled to define the economic policy, guarantee the means of regulating national monopolies, and monitor the balance of fundamental indicators, while imposing to economic operators the respect for the rules of the game. In this sense, it is expected that new kinds of simple, transparent, and easy-to-execute contracts be set for the activities of exploration and production of hydrocarbons and ores. They will be accompanied by means to control and accelerate procedures, establishment of new contracts, and operation of new fields. The goal of the new laws regarding hydrocarbons and electricity is to guarantee the upstream and downstream forced competition of this sector, while banning any de facto monopoly beyond the regulation of natural monopolies. The aim is to gather the necessary conditions to the good functioning of an open and competitive market economy. A fair treatment will hence be guaranteed to all economic operators, whether they be Algerian or foreign, public or private, forbidding any kind of discrimination. State-owned companies will be merged in a transparent legal framework to well manage their activities, and in this regard, figure all the partnership solutions suitable for them. The planned measures will reinforce the assets of Sonatrach, which will devote its effort to manage its trading and industrial functions. Under the new law, Sonatrach will be able to stand as more reliable and financially stronger as a partner. Exports and imports of crude oil and refined products will be liberalized. Freedom will also be granted in the medium run to refineries for the purchase of their crude and the selling of the refined products, as well as the expansion of their activities towards distribution, including abroad. Exporting gas and electricity will be possible for state-owned companies by themselves or in association with other national or foreign actors. In addition to Sonatrach, private sector operators will be able to build transport infrastructures. An access of third parties to the ATR network will also be instituted with the implementation of non-discriminatory prices for the transport of the products of all operators. The new organic configuration of the energy sector will take shape through the transformation of the role of state-owned companies, which are solely involved in trade activities, and the definition of the role of new state institutions as agencies. An agency called Alneft, in charge of promoting the mining field, the granting of exploration and production contracts through bid tenders, and management of the data bank attached to it. An agency for the economic regulation of natural monopolies in charge of regulation of hydrocarbons. And finally, an authority to regulate the electricity sector and the gas sector in charge of regulating access to the electricity transport distribution system and seeing to the implementation of regulations on the industrial security and the environment. The agencies concerned with hydrocarbons and electricity grant concessions to natural monopolies, transport of hydrocarbons, transport of electricity, and storage of refined products, and see to the free, non-discriminatory access of third parties to granted monopolies. Ladies and gentlemen, I am satisfied indeed with our trade relations with American companies, especially in the hydrocarbon field. It augurs bright prospects if political will and constructive imagination are included, and in this regard, I trust you all along. The statistics show for the year 2000 that global earnings generated by Algerian hydrocarbon exports to American companies represent nearly $4 billion, in which liquid hydrocarbons reach approximately $3 billion. Gas hydrocarbons, with an amount of $120 million, represent only 5% of Algeria's total LNG exports and 22% of U.S. total LNG imports. I cannot mention all American companies which contribute to the rise of these trade relations with Algeria and which work in my country in the fields of exploring, production, and services. They are as numerous as they are prestigious, but I would like, however, to mention only some of them, such as BP Amoco Arco, Exxon Amerada Hess, Halliburton, Anadarko, Burlington, Bechtel, etc., etc. I would also like to remind you that the recoverable reserves on the fields exploited are around 4 billion, which is much more than what you that you have with Morocco. And if we compare it to Tunisia, Algeria then is the second one, comparison to Saudi Arabia. And to make it clear, the last time I was in the U.S., the American oil and gas companies had said that in the 3 or 4 years to come, these amounts would be doubled. I would like to remind you that the recoverable reserves on the fields that are exploited by American companies are about 543 million cubic meters for crude oil, 46 billion cubic meters for gas, and 25 million tons for condensate. Let me remind you that in view of our potential and prospective nature of our substratum and our determination to go towards integrated projects, Algeria offers you large possibilities of direct partnership investments and technical cooperation. The Algerian new energy policy and the recent framework agreement on the development of trade and investment signed by our two countries last July in Washington lay on this ground. Ladies and gentlemen, Algeria, in regards to all the reforms that have been taken to go towards a market economy and to go from a monolithic society to a pluralist and democratic society, then if you doubt it, it should be clear that we don't have a choice. This is a challenge that we need to meet, and we are ready to do so. Algeria, ladies and gentlemen, crosses the threshold of 1 million barrels per day of oil and is ready to reach 1.5 million in 2005. In the same process, it will reinforce its gas dimension by doubling its capacities, but especially by adapting to the structural changes of its markets. The partnerships were and remain to be an essential link in its approach. Our concerns are large, thanks to all its prospects for partnership, especially in the new international oil and gas scene. Thank you very much. You have been very kind. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. Thank you very much.
Pardon, quelques questions que je veux... Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, Algeria has been fighting against terrorism for more than 10 years. How do you foresee the cooperation between our two questions in order to fight terrorism and global terrorism? I believe that the Algerian people, since it has been suffering for more than 10 years from fundamentalist terrorism, has spontaneously reacted and shared the sufferings of the American people when they were hit. Terrorism is the enemy of human civilization. It should be fought against with all means. I would like to add, since we are not a superpower, we do understand what you do in Afghanistan, and we would like to underscore here that we have been following the Security Council, which adopted the resolution, and you committed yourself to apply it in order to have targeted bombings, trying to avoid at the maximum that innocent life are not victims, because we do believe also in civilization and culture, and innocent people could not pay for the criminals. You are a superpower and you are fighting on a global and there is Algeria, A battle has been fought there for 10 years. Now, the fact that you won the battle at Casino or Al Alamein was already preparing the victory, the Allied victory over Nazism and fascism. So if you will allow me and permit me to rely on your help and to rely on your assistance for having an assistant to receive sophisticated equipment in order to eradicate violence and fundamentalist violence, we shall contribute and significantly contribute to peace and stability in the Maghreb, in the Arab world, and certainly further on in Africa, because there is a beginning of beginnings of terrorism and extremism in Nigeria. The same applies to South Africa. So, as a friend, we come here and we hope that you may help us, that you can help us to fight terrorism, which is a scourge, which is an enemy of any human civilization. Although we are Arabs, we feel that we have to be solidarian with Arabs and the Muslims, but in any way we can admit that the religion is used and it's used to establish violence as a mean of dialogue and to give a distorted image of our countries and of our spiritual belief. The word crusade was used, conflict of civilization. But I would like to reject with all my energy, there won't be any crusade, there won't be any civilization conflict. Human civilization is the sum, is the summing up of all human endeavors, and it belongs to all. We are here to defend it, and we should avoid to mix up things and to tell some that we are waging a racial war.
How can the American people communicate better with Muslims country, with Islamic countries? With the power that the United States has, I believe that I can borrow President Bush's words saying that power, as it can be important, and because it is important, it cannot be used over humble people. My country is not there to give the United States a solution, but I just admire its leaders, and the question of the Middle East has found Mr. James Baker, my friend, who devoted so much time to try to obtain a very difficult peace between the key actors. And in the name of all the victims of this war, in the name of all the victims of this conflict, which will not stop, I would like to honor him, and I would like to make sure that in spite of the prior concerns, the American administration will always be concerned with the Middle Eastern problems, which, from my point of view, guarantee the stability of the Arab people and Arab countries, no matter what. And that's why the leaders will always be concerned with this. and make sure that the media who have tried to report what's going on in Afghanistan have provided this feeling that they are trying to hide what's going on in Palestine. And our people are very politicized, very sensitive, and very unpredictable. And we would desire, it is desirable for the interest of the Americans and the U.S. that this problem in the Middle East be resolved not only at the Israeli-Palestinian level, but also as far as what's concerned with Syria and Lebanon. This is the price, and this only with this price is that we will be able to be convinced, that the Arabs will be convinced that this is the right way. The last question, you have obviously had a very important role in the settlement of the problem between Ethiopia and Eritrea. How would you be able to resolve this? I think it's a lot easier to be an intermediary, to be a middle person between in this region, because they don't belong to the same region that we are in. That's why it's easier to be objective and not to be subjective and leave all subjectivity aside. It's clear that we will never reach a solution. I have to underline this and note it again. Our friends and our brothers and American brothers that have worked with us day and night, and we have exchanged this role with them. Sometimes it was you, sometimes it was us, and sometimes we were together. And our friends in Syria have also contributed to something that we couldn't deny.
The moment a tiny little country is assisted by the United States of America, just to be understood, just comprehension. And there are European countries that, they had a lot of interest in the Horn of Africa. It's always possible to find solutions. The problem of Western Sahara, like other problems, may have a solution. There is a solution for it. Algeria, which is defending since the 60s at the UN, for instance, which is defending I was myself a dynamic actor and a key actor in this matter. I was defending at the same time Belize, I was defending Brunei, Timor, and Suriname, and Western Sahara. What I was asking for was self-determination for all those countries. Occupying powers at that time have properly settled the problem of Belize, Brunei, Suriname. But I'm not happy. I'm not happy to say that after the visit of President Ford in Jakarta, in Indonesia, a week later, Timor was annexed by Indonesia. Indonesia is a country which has close ties with Algeria because it is Bandung. Bandung was an important moment. It was a landmark for our liberation struggle. And despite of the privileged links and ties, we never ceased to advocate for self-determination of Timor, and we were the very first country to recognize its independence. So what we want to apply for some countries should be also applied in other instances. And very simply, and maybe recording the Bible, I don't want anyone to tell me that we have to condemn the invasion of Kuwait, and I believe in that. It has to be condemned. But the invasion of Western Sahara should be, by the same token, condemned. And in the same manner, we cannot say that terrorists in Afghanistan are bad terrorists, while other terrorists in the Western capitals are good terrorists. So I'm like that, and I'm sorry for it, but this is my humble opinion. Thank you, Mr. President.
I would like to say that I renew the Algerian people's confidence in the competence and the quality and the extraordinary imagination that my friend Mr. James Baker has to get out of this impasse, because it's obvious that the construction of the Maghreb Arab, that will be the responsibility, an important responsibility that obviously is really worth it. And it's a part that the U.S. is very interested in, and I would like to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.